tonight's big stories, Vice President Sara Duterte draws flack for calling critics of her confidential funds Kalaban ng Bayan, or enemies of the state. We'll speak to Kabataan Party List Representative Raoul Manuel about this.
Inflation accelerates further in September, clocking in at 6.1%. Even more worrisome, despite the price cap, rice inflation surged to the highest level in 14 years.
And just what was it like to be in Hangzhou to witness Gilas Pilipinas' sensational win over China? We'll get a live report from one of our sports correspondents over there.
Welcome to the show. I'm Regina.
I'm Gretchen.
And I'm Shawn.
Well, we're just kicking off this newscast with a win.
Yes.
On a good note, we're doing it differently tonight and kicking off with sports because, as you all know by now, the Gilas men's team's advancing to the finals of the Asian Games for the first time in 33 years. Against a China team replete with FIBA World Cup veterans, Gilas looked headed for a consolation game for the bronze medal. But once again, Justin Brownlee had better ideas. Brownlee scored 33 points, including 17 in the fourth quarter, along with his back-to-back triples in the final minute, fueled a closing 10-0 run by Gilas that sealed the 77-76 win over China. As Gilas celebrated making history, Coach Tim Cone still couldn't believe how it went down.
I'm just shocked I'm here talking to you. I tell you, I am just absolutely shocked that we're here in front of all these people and talking about a win. I mean, I am in total shock. They got a pull-up shot, I think of about 20 feet, but it was hard challenge by New. He missed it, and CJ came down with that big rebound, and I was like, this doesn't happen. This only happens in movies. It doesn't happen live, real life.
The last time the Philippines played in a gold medal game was in the 1990 edition of the Asian Games. That's 33 years ago. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., Gilas will try to make history as they face Jordan once more, this time for the gold.
So we got to come out on an even keel, but we should have confidence. You know, we should be a little bit confident in our shots, and hopefully we can get out to a good start against Jordan.
Yeah, joining us tonight to talk about what it felt like being inside the Hangzhou Olympic Sports Center during Gilas' historic victory over China, we have with us live via Zoom one sports correspondent, Paulo Del Rosario. Hi, Pao. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for stepping out to talk to us tonight.
Thank you for having me, girls. It's a real pleasure. And, you know, even us here in Hangzhou, none of us are over what happened last night here.
I know.
And it has been an incredible experience.
Incredible. Tell us what it was like covering that.
Well, you know, we're not going to lie. A lot of us thought that, okay, talo na tayo. We were down by 7, I believe, nearing the 1-minute mark. And we were actually down by 5 with around 50 or so seconds left in the game. And sabi nga ni Coach Tim Cone during the press conference na nawalan siya ng pag-asa. But then he said that his players did not lose hope, and that's what mattered. And that's what we saw in the end game.
33, that's the magic number.
Actually, I was gonna say, that last gold medal was one whole Gretchen ago.
Uy, kasi yun yung sasabihin ko, 1990.
Give away yung age niya.
Hindi lang yun, 33 points din si Justin Brownlee. Pao, I know you're a numbers guy. Take us through the numbers of how historic this was, and also, you know, going into the Jordan game and all those numbers that are, you know, just so important to remember.
Yeah, you know what? You mentioned 33, and I was going to mention that Gretchen's age kasi 1990 din ako. So when you take a look...
Sorry, naunahan kita.
Okay lang yan. But then you take a look at it. So 33 points for Justin Brownlee. I think what's more incredible is that he actually only had 6 points in the first half. So lahat ng production niya nangyari in the second half. Si Scottie Thompson actually led the charge in the first half with 11 points at the end of that. Now, Gretchen asked about going into the Jordan game. Remember, we did lose by around 20 or so points. I believe it was 25 points in the first match that we had here in the Asian Games. Pero sabi ni Coach Tim Cone in the post-game press conference that this team has grown since then. Remember, this team has only been together for 12 days before the Asian Games. And after 6 days of being together, they had to change half the team dahil sa mga regulations that, according to Coach Tim Cone, were quote-unquote a miscommunication. So this group practically has had 6 days together and has been learning as they go here sa Asian Games na to. Butan na lang si Justin Brownlee, has been amazing.
39 minutes and 51 seconds. Gusto ko lang idagdag doon. That's the number of minutes Justin Brownlee played almost the whole
entire game.
Oo.
Pero Pao, take us through that halftime change in strategy of Coach Tim. Nabanggit mo nga, no, nung first half, halata naman ang konti nung production ni Justin Brownlee. On the second half, Coach Tim went
Came
small.
alive.
Yeah, he came alive, and then he changed things in the lineup. Can you talk us through what happened there?
So Coach Tim went on a very big gamble. For those who are not too into basketball or don't know much about the strategy, and ginawa ni Coach Tim, he played smaller, which is counterintuitive to what when you're playing against China. So naglaro siya with 3 guards, in particular si Kevin Alas, Chris Newsom, and si Scottie Thompson. We have to give special mention to Kevin Alas because in particular he had 5 straight points in the fourth quarter that helped fuel the run of Gilas Pilipinas against China in that stretch. So that change there, syempre may mga nangyari in the middle of the third and fourth quarter. But people will remember yung 3-guard lineup ni Coach Tim playing very small against a very big team. The height difference was evident. But we also have to give credit to our bigs who really managed to stay on the floor and keep us in the lead in terms of rebounding.
Pao, just to understand the context of this win, we also won against China back in the FIBA World Cup. 20-plus points with Jordan Clarkson. How different is that team, China and the Philippines, from this game, China and the Philippines as well?
Well, for the Philippines, alam naman natin lahat that the coaching staff is completely different. They had to learn a new system, a new set of players as well. Wala na yung mga KBL players natin, Japan B-League players natin. So it was always going to be a different look. Now, you take a look at this Chinese team. China actually had 9 of the 12 players from the FIBA Basketball World Cup playing in this Asian Games. Albeit, yung dalawa sa players na nawala were key players in Kyle Anderson, who's an NBA player, and si Jochi, who's an NBA caliber player, who was out due to injury. But still, this group has been together longer, this Chinese team, and we were going to this one as underdogs, especially kapag binilang natin yung days of preparation together. For China, same coaching staff, same system, and yet, for some reason, a miracle happened for Justin Brownlee, for Coach Tim Cone, and the rest of Gilas Pilipinas, and we were all celebrating in a very hostile environment, I might add.
Gusto ko lang balikan, no, Pao, Kevin Alas, nabanggit mo nga, he did score 5 straight points, but he kind of had an iffy Asiad so far, right? Were you able to talk to him and maybe discuss what was going on in his head? Ano nang bago?
Well, you know, it's a good thing that si Kevin mismo yung nagsabi that he was not playing very well going into this game in particular. In fact, he admitted that he hasn't been where he wanted to be. Pero there was actually a moment right before he went on his little own 5-0 run na mag-isa. He actually, Coach Tim actually took him aside during a huddle, during a timeout, and told him individually, you have to play like you do in the PBA. Be aggressive, go and attack. And that's exactly what happened a possession after. So si Coach Tim Cone brought up a lineup that had him on the side and had his Ginebra core there, Japet Aguilar, Scottie Thompson, and Justin Brownlee. So they ran the triangle, nalibre si Kevin Alas twice, and they went on a 5-1 run.
You say this is a miracle of a win. Sabi mo, ikaw na nagsabi nun. Pero do you think it was really a miracle? Or did Coach Tim Cone have a specific play towards the end? And also, what do you think has been effective for him? Some fans are saying he is the best fit, he is the gold standard for being the coach of Gilas.
Well, you know, we're always going to have different opinions when it comes to coaching and coaching choices. And in fact, if we did not win this game, I have a feeling yung narrative iba siya, especially with how badly we started in that first half. But you take a look at what Coach Tim Cone has been doing here. A lot of it has been learning by doing, adjusting. Sabi nga ng Coach Tim Cone in previous conversations I've had with him, that the thing with Filipino coaches or coaches who play in the PBA, who compete in the PBA, is that they learn to adjust quickly because of the fact that they play the similar opposition all the time. So you're seeing Coach Tim Cone adjusting and learning by doing with his coaching staff, with this group of players, and applying it here to an Asian game setting. So far, that has been the biggest strength na nakita ko in particular, especially my conversations with both the coaching staff and the players. They're all getting used to being with one another, and they're doing it at a very quick rate. Kaya nananalo tayo, and we're also adjusting. And that's why Coach Tim Cone did say that you're going to see a different team from what we saw in that loss against Jordan at the start of the Asian Games compared to what we're going to see tomorrow. Because the team has grown together in such a way na iba na talaga yung ipapakita nila against Jordan tomorrow.
Alright, Pao, nabanggit mo no, na medyo nasa hostile environment kayo dyan sa Hangzhou. Kamusta yung reaction ng Chinese crowd? We only got to see really pretty much the reaction of Yao Ming after the game.
He went viral actually after that.
Nabu ba kayo
Yes.
dyan?
We were actually behind Yao Ming when the final buzzer rang. Buti na lang kami, me and my team, we were in an area wherein secluded kami, medyo isolated kami, so pwede kami mag-celebrate. Pero when you look at the entire venue, Coach Tim Cone used the word that he felt that the entire Chinese crowd was stunned. And I think that's a very apt way to describe kung ano nangyari that day, that night. Because it felt there was a sense of disbelief because they were up by 20 points. The biggest lead was around 46 to 26, and they had a sizable lead going 1 minute going into the game. So what happened was iba talaga, smash and grab, hit and run. I don't know how you describe it, but then you take a look at the entire reaction and expectation ng home crowd. Again, the Philippines has not beaten China in China for a very long time. And to do it in an Asian game setting wherein it matters a lot to the home crowd, it was very surreal for them. So, I honestly don't know kung ano magiging referendum ng CBA for their own team. But then, base sa reaction that day, there was an eerie silence with a smattering of cheers from the Gilas Filipinas women who were on the side. Kami, yung mga journalists na unfortunately very biased towards yung result na nakita natin that night. So, it was a strange situation, but something that I personally would not forget for a very long time.
So you had to keep the celebrations low key. I mean, you mentioned you're sitting right behind Yao Ming, right?
It was not low key.
You weren't scared he was going to stand up and deck you?
Were you screaming? Did anyone cry from the Philippine side?
We will not mention who cried to protect everyone's identities. Okay. Pero yeah, look, a very emotional moment. I think everyone, because we all thought that we were at a loss. We did not expect to see history unfold before our very eyes, and that's what happened.
So what's happening? What's happening tonight? So tomorrow is the gold medal game against Jordan. Ano nangyayari ngayon? Are they resting? Are you able to still talk to the players, the team?
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to talk to the players today in particular. I did talk to a few members of the coaching staff to figure out kung anong ginagawa nila ngayon. Actually, throughout their whole dinner time, because they do have practice earlier in the day, but throughout their entire evening, all they have been doing is going through tape, trying to figure out ways to adjust, because they don't want to burn themselves out in practice because they just played. So what they're doing right now is trying to make sure that mentally handa na sila for the action that's going to happen tomorrow. They know the adjustments that have to be made. It's going to be a situation wherein our coaches in particular are going to be very excited to try different adjustments that they've seen in their first game against Jordan. Because Philippine basketball, one of the things that is great about Philippine basketball is that if we play a certain opposition multiple times, grabbing mga adjustment that are normally made by the coaches that we have here. So expect to see a bit more of that, a bit more tactical changes that I'm sure basketball diehards would appreciate. At sana yung resulta will be something that even the casual fans will appreciate. Kasi sana it could potentially be a gold medal for the Philippines. But of course, they have to beat Jordan first before we actually finally celebrate it.
Paolo, have you gotten a feel for Chinese social media and their reactions to this game? And kamusta naman yung tension dun sa loob ng court, no? Just, konting chismis lang ba? Before we let you go.
Unfortunately, wala pa akong Weibo. But then when you take a look at the AFP actually did a report on the social media reaction towards the Chinese national basketball team, and the fans have piled on their national team based on your performance nila. But of course, I haven't seen it myself. I unfortunately do not read the language as well. Pero it has been a big talking point. It has been a big talking point all throughout the media areas. In fact, on the bus trip home, even those who were not at the venue were talking about it. And alam namin kasi their phones were up and then they were all looking at the highlights of the game. So that's us assuming that they were talking about it. But yeah, it has been a big talking point, especially with China really loving basketball the way that they do. It is one of the more watched sports here in the country. Kaya it has sent shockwaves for sure. But I will not pretend that I know the exact words
Maybe,
said or
maybe next time
whatever.
we'll send Shawn over to cover
Yeah, maybe.
and we'll
And
have
yourself.
easdrop a bit.
Okay, we're
I don't
gonna
know
have
what
to
I'm doing here.
We're gonna have to leave it
definitely,
there. But thank you so
yeah.
much for sharing your experience. We almost feel like we're right there with you. That was one sports correspondent, Paulo Del Rosario, who's reporting to us live from Hangzhou, China. Still on China, but on more serious matters now, China has condemned the Philippines' most recent resupply mission to Ayungin. Remember, the context to this is that yesterday, Philippine Coast Guard reported that it successfully sent supplies to our troop station at the BRP Sierra Madre.
And of
right?
course, there were videos seeing, again, dangerous
that they're-
maneuvers.
Militia
Cutting
ships
it off, cutting the-
blocking off
yes.
the resupply mission.
We have that
by the
video
Philippines.
on our screen
There we go.
from the
You can
resupply.
see in the video the Chinese Coast Guard vessels were intentionally cutting across the path of the escort vessel BRP Cabra. So China employed what the Coast Guard called dangerous maneuvers in another attempt to interfere with the PCG's resupply mission. The foreign Coast Guard didn't seem to mind the impending collision, so the PCG had to slow the vessel down. No less than 12 Chinese militia ships were also spotted making the rounds in the area. Despite that, the National Security Council said the resupply mission was still a success. But in a post on their website, China Coast Guard spokesperson Gan Yu said the Philippine supply ships and 2 Coast Guard ships entered their waters in China's Nansha Islands, or what we know as Spratlys or Kalayaan, without permission from the Chinese government. The Chinese Coast Guard also said in its post that it issued stern warnings against the Philippine mission, which it described as illegal transport of materials to the ship that, quote-unquote, sits on the beach illegally.
Now, for its part, the Philippine government itself is ramping up developments in the Kalayaan group of islands, particularly on Pag-asa Island, in order to increase Filipino presence in our territorial waters. Among these developments is this sheltered port for Filipino fishermen. This is where they can seek temporary shelter should their operations at sea be hounded by bad weather. Construction of these shelters actually started back in 2018 and is expected to finish this year. But for AFP Chief of Staff Romeo Browner Jr., there's still a lot that needs to be done to increase our presence in the disputed territory.
We really have to harden yung ating mga positions dito sa Kalayaan Group of Islands. We have 9 features that we are occupying at kailangan tuloy-tuloy yung pag-develop natin dito dahil gusto natin na maging permanent yung ating presence. Inaantay natin yung mga karagdagang mga barko natin. And hopefully by next year, dumating itong mga barko, we will have more patrols in the area.
So, what do our local fishermen think about these developments in Pag-asa Island? Francis Orsio gives us the answer, as well as some details on how Speaker Martin Romualdez' visit to the island. Francis, what do you have?
Shawn, fishermen at Pag-asa Island say these sheltered ports are a big help for their operations, but they remain concerned over the presence of huge Chinese fishing vessels disseminating local catches. In fact, earlier today, our team spotted at least 3 Chinese Coast Guard vessels right from the sheltered port in Pag-asa Island. Sabi ng mga mangingisda, halos araw-araw daw silang nakikipagpatentero sa China.
Mga arang, kaya hindi na namin pinapuntahan. Kasi masyado ng malaki ang barko nila. Sa amin, maliliit lang gamit eh. Imbis na doon, maraming isda na makukuha na namin. Wala na, ito na lang yung space namin na napupuntahan. Maliit na lang.
Lagi nagpapatrolla yung Chinese Coast Guard dyan. So ngayon hindi kami makapenetrate dyan dahil binubusinahan kami at ginigiri-girian kami na medyo hinaharangan kami. Tapos pinapalayo kami, tinataboy.
Aside from that, Filipino fishermen also feared that they might face the same fate as the 3 fishermen who died after their ship was rammed by a foreign crude oil tanker.
Napakahirap. Gawa nung siguro, ang hiling ko lang sa gobyerno, sana magpatrolya naman yung mga Philippine Coast Guard, yung mga ship natin na malalaki, para naman medyo magkaroon sila ng pag-alinlangan, maalangan din sila.
Earlier today, House Speaker Martin Romualdez visited Pagasa to check in on the developments in the island. Other developments include the extension of the runway, additional vessel shelters, and docking facilities for Coast Guard and Navy ships. Romualdez says this is the reason why it is important to realign confidential funds from civilian agencies and focus them on departments that deal with security.
A portion of it that initially has been already decided to be allocated will be put in. But beyond that, mas malaki pa ang inisip nating pondo para dito.
From that, Romualdez says the government is also eyeing to make the island a tourist destination. Shawn?
All right, thank you for that, Francis Orsho.
Up next, Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte issued some serious statements against critics of confidential funds for the OVP and DepEd. More on that when the big story returns. Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
Guys, I don't know if you saw this, but there is a video circulating on social media about a traffic disruption from the closing of one portion of Commonwealth Avenue, supposedly to make way for Vice President Sara Duterte's vehicle. Let's watch this.
Ano po reason? Sino po ito? Sino?
VP. Saglit lang po.
VP Sara? So sinara niyo yung Commonwealth para dumaan si VP Sara?
Dadaan lang po. Dadaan lang. Kukross lang po.
Wow!
Kukross lang po siya. Saglit lang po.
Kukross si VP Sara, sinara niyo yung Commonwealth.
Saglit lang po.
Alright, sige. Kukross si VP Sara. Si VP Sara tatawid, kaya tumigil muna tayo. Tigil muna tayo dahil tatawid si VP Sara, ha?
This is a tale, by the way, of exercising caution on based on what you see on social media,
true.
right? Because if you see that video on its own, syempre, what would you feel, right?
Nakakainis eh. Yeah, it's annoying.
Even if you were
Up to special
passing
treatment.
there,
Uh-huh.
exactly, and then turns out it wasn't her, or at least VP Sara issued a statement saying, "I want to emphasize." It's a pretty long statement, but she says, "I want to emphasize that neither I nor my office ever made any request for assistance from the QCPD to orchestrate such an action. The claims in this video are not only misleading, but also outright false." That's a statement that she issued just this evening, in
Right, but
fact.
the QCPD also issued its own statement.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Now, the plot thickens,
The
right?
plot thickens. So they actually apologized, basically, for this incident. So ano ba talaga? I mean, if you apologize, it means you kind of...
Nag-overreact daw sila.
At the end of that statement, though, Lieutenant Colonel says, "I have ordered the relief of my policeman and put him under
wow,
investigation to determine administrative liability for his actions.
And we know
Medyo harsh,
when the QC government does this, they really mean business. It's been a series of, remember that puppy? I mean, they really take a hard stance.
But in the QCPD statement kasi we read was that apparently the officer in charge, the one who said it was VP Sara, he just misheard it. He heard na VP, so he assumed it was VP Sara who wanted to pass through.
Baka
That's
VIP,
why-
VIP.
Could
ganon.
be.
Could be.
So that's why he stopped traffic already. So I thought it was an honest mistake. I don't know. if
Nevertheless, okay.
administrative charges are necessary.
Nevertheless, I'm
pero-
sure we've all been on the road and na-experience natin yung may VIP
I
na...
would have appreciated an investigation first before
Yes,
relief of the police.
exactly.
Not the other way around.
I think they jumped the gun because it was now the VP's office has issued a statement. So now it became a national issue.
Actually,
na.
pero I'm also muddled because back in the time of President Noynoy Aquino, bawal wangwang, we all knew that and then nobody dared. But it has come back, you know, after his term. So, ako for me, like, no VIPs dapat on the road. So regardless of who this was, we don't know who it is, but...
VP man o VIP?
VIP, oo. Di dapat ganun, no? Ang
VP,
pasakit ka
VIP,
sa
whatever it
maraming
may
tao.
be. Para it's just a simple miscommunication that got blown out of proportion. Again, social media kasi. It went viral na kasi. So that's why
Be
they had to
careful what
issue.
you see also online.
Be careful
you
how
share.
you react, right?
Dapat, Gretchen, ikaw yung nasa MTRC, taga-police ng social media. Yan. O, ito,
Okay.
Vice President Sara Duterte.
Pareho.
And talagang siya na to, she has actually clapped back at critics of confidential funds, saying that they're as good as enemies of the state or, quote, kalaban ng bayan. VP Duterte maintains that the Office of the Vice President and the Education Department, which she also heads, would use its CIF to pursue and promote peace and security. Let's listen to the parts of the Vice President's speech.
Anyone who attacks or undermines funds allocated for peace and order is naturally assumed to have insidious motivations. Such actions go against the protection and well-being of the citizenry. Kung sino man ang kumukontra sa confidential funds ay kumukontra sa kapayapaan. Kung sino ang kumukontra sa kapayapaan ay kalaban ng bayan.
So before this, the lower chamber had decided to realign the confidential funds from the OVP, the DepEd, and other civilian agencies to those departments actually dealing with matters of national security. The Senate is also set to discuss the matter during budget deliberations.
In the meantime, we also know that the Vice President said just a month ago that her office can live without confidential funds. Ito nga yung sinabi niya during the Finance Committee hearing back in September 4. Let's roll that soundbite.
We leave it to the decision and discretion of the members of Congress. We can only propose, but we are not insisting. We can live without confidential funds. But of course, our work will be much easier if we have the flexibility of confidential funds.
How important are confidential funds exactly?
Joining us tonight to talk about this is Kabataan Party List Representative Raoul Manuel, who is one of the staunchest critics of the OVP and DepEd office's confidential funds. Representative Manuel, thanks for joining us tonight. My first question to you right away is, are you an enemy of the state? Kalaban ka ba ng bayan?
Hello po, good evening po sa lahat, sa mga viewers natin. Hindi po tayo kalaban ng bayan. Pati rin yung maraming mga Pilipino na nagtatanong lamang po saan ginastos at saan balak gastusin ang hinihinging confidential funds. Bahagi po ng nation building, bahagi po ng trabaho natin para sa bayan ang pag-ensure na ang bawat piso ay nagagamit po para sa serbisyo at para sa tama.
Right, Congressman Raul, sabi kasi ni Vice President Duterte, ito yung sabi niya, ang DepEd daw kasi is part of the Anti-Terrorism Council and the NTF-ELCAC. So, kailangan daw ng pondo para doon. What's your opinion on that?
Tingin po natin, our civilian agencies already have much on their plate. Ang dami nang dapat na tiyakin, ang dami nilang responsibilities in line with their mandate. For example, DepEd is expected actually to support welfare of teachers. Teachers Day pa naman po ngayong araw. yung pag-address ng learning recovery and learning crisis. So, we think ang obsession ng mga civilian agencies sa confidential funds is already too much at dapat bumalik sila sa primary mandate ng kanilang mga opisina.
Para sa'yo ba dapat tanggalin lahat ng confidential funds ng DepEd tsaka ng OVP? Kasi sabi naman nila, yung confidential funds have been there with certain agencies. Ayun nga lang, ngayon medyo lumobo kaya napapansin na ng taong bayan. Ano para sa'yo, tanggalin lahat o tapyasan lang?
For us, when it comes to the confidential funds, dahil it's already a secret fund at hindi na audit ng lubos for checking of our government. Tapos, ang dami na rin mga serbisyo na mas nangangailangan ng pondo. Very clear na kailangan nila ng funds. Hindi na kailangan gawing sekreto. So para sa atin, dapat lahat ng confidential funds ay mawala na. That's why part of the amendments filed by Kabataan Party List along with ACT Teachers and Gabriela Women's Party is to abolish all confidential funds of agencies in the government.
All confidential funds
Ng
across the board.
civilians. Civilian
Yes,
agencies.
Or across the board?
Yes. Para po sa atin, across the board, ang proposal po na iyan is based on our observation. For example, kung usapin man ng national security at halimbawa, pag-protect sa West Philippine Sea, we have clear needs for our Coast Guard pag-acquire ng dagdag na mga equipment or mga barko. So tingin po natin ang mga ganung expenses no longer need to be confidential.
Okay, Kong Raul, matanong ko lang, no, late in the game biglang, di ba, nag-issue ng statement lahat ng major parties, lahat ng party leaders, sabi na tatapyasan na nga or i-review at i-realign itong mga CIFs. How did you take that news? And I just have to ask if you really think they will deliver on this promise na ma-realign yung CIFs.
Yeah. Tingin natin ang ganong move ng leaders ng House is a response doon sa nangyayaring discourse inside and outside the Congress. At napakita natin na kapag nagtatanong ang taong bayan, compelled ang mga public officials na tumugon. In terms of the likelihood, tayo naman, we are clinging to our hope that the House leadership will deliver. Ang sabit nga lang, no, or ang isang issue lang, kasi we approved the national budget on third and final reading in the House of Representatives without any amendment. So ang commitment ng House leaders will actually go through a small committee. It's an informal body, hindi siya formal na component ng House. And those amendments, whatever they can come up, will go through the bicameral conference committee. So doon, hindi na lang House yon, magtatalo na ng mga differences in proposed amendments with the Senate. Kaya kailangan pa rin talaga nating maging vigilant.
Yan ba yung group kanina na nagpuntang Pag-asa Island, Kong?
Yeah, the group of four with leaders of the Appropriations Committee, Majority Leader, and Minority Leader.
So silang apat lang magdedesisyon about the realignment?
Yeah, sila po then kung ano man ang kanilang mga mapag-uusapan, hindi pa yan binding since didiretso na yon sa BICAM, hindi yan babalik sa amin sa lahat ng members ng House.
I think we have to give you credit for helping spark the conversation and the debate around this. No, I mean, you were one of the most vocal during the budget deliberations. Natawa nga ako when you...
Pinatayan ka ng mic.
No, not just that, but when you said, what was it, libreng sakay to the WPS, to the West Philippine Sea, right? But in terms of yung mic, when they turned your mic off, I was wondering what happened after that. Were there more discussions? Did you come to a resolution? Did anyone reach out? What happened?
Well, after po nun, there were no longer any conversations, especially with the leaders of the House who were taking charge of the floor at that time. Pero ang sa atin nila moving forward, we hope na hindi na po iyon maulit. Kasi kahit po ang mga microphone na yan, public funds po ang ginamit to invest in that. And those microphones should aid us in discourse sa loob ng Kamara. Hindi po dapat yan ginagamit to stop discussions in vital issues. Lalo na po ang point na dinedeliver natin at that time was the rampant abuse of confidential funds. Aside po sa OVP tsaka DepEd, We take note ang may pinakamalaki pong confidential and intelligence funds, Office of the President. At yun po ang ating pinapoint out na hindi dapat natin pinadali ang pagpasa ng national budget without any amendment to the point of shutting down someone's microphone.
Ito rin pala sabi ni Vice President, no? It matters not whether it takes 1 day or 1 year of spending. What truly matters is the safety and security of our people. When it comes to that statement, ano ba ibig sabihin ng Presidente dun sa safety and security? To your knowledge, gaano kalaki ba yung problema natin? For example, sa NPA, getting infiltrated, our schools, our youth getting infiltrated. To your knowledge, I mean, how big of a problem is it right now?
Yeah. Tingin po natin very inconsistent na rin talaga ang ating government agencies. Yung sinasabing whole of nation approach, parang hindi ko siya nararamdaman. Kasi if we are to take the words of our armed forces at magiging batayan natin yon, sabi naman nila, patapos na ang armed conflict sa ating bansa. But now, we can hear from the Vice President herself na problem pa rin daw yon at dapat sugpuin at dapat tumugon ang Department of Education. But then again, speaking of inconsistencies, yung ating mga state universities and colleges, tsaka ang Commission on Higher Education, who are also part of the education community, hindi rin naman nagpo-propose ng confidential funds. Kaya tingin natin ang pag-invoke ng peace and order, national security, parang nagiging smoke screen na lang siya para makahingi ng secret funds ang iba't ibang mga ahensya.
In the plenary debate on the D&D budget, you also brought up the syllabus branding Philippine history, national situation, and world situation as NPA subjects. Ano yung nakita mo nun exactly? Nasita mo siya? Anong syllabus yun?
Yeah.
Oo.
Yeah. Ang naging basis po natin is a document from a center connected to the AFP itself. It's the Center for Prevention of Violent Extremism, as they call it. Tapos, ang laman po nun is different ways on how they can stop yung violence daw sa ating bansa. And part nun ay listahan ng mga subjects na tinatag as NPA subjects. And we were so shocked actually na yan kasama doon world history, world situation, national situation. So it's very dangerous at nabigla din tayo hindi dinenay ng AFP, ginustify pa ang ganon.
What exactly were they proposing to do to these subjects?
Tatanggalin o papalitan or i-edit yung syllabus?
Mas based po doon sa nakuha nating document when it comes to those topics, history and current events. Ang mode po nila is kapag dinidiscuss daw ang ganung mga topics, that is a clue na nag-recruit for armed groups ang kung sino mang participants sa mga discussion na iyon. Tapos yung isa pa, yung isa po ito very explicit talaga na para daw ma-counter ang mga propaganda di umano ay ang pagtuturo daw halimbawa ng martial law, dapat pinapakita paano ito nakatulong sa ekonomiya. So yun talaga, I think that state-sponsored disinformation na galing mismo sa ating mga supposedly ay bahagi na ating pamahalaan, nagpapakalat ng ganun. So hindi po yun katanggap-tanggap talaga.
Should we get a copy of that?
We're going to have to review that as well. But for now, we're going to have to leave it there. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was Kabataan Party List Representative Raoul Manuel. House Speaker Martin Romualdez has denied that it was politics that led to the realignment of the OVP and DepEd's confidential and intelligence funds. The Speaker was asked to comment about the speculation that VP Sara's CIFs were removed amid supposed tensions between the two of them. Recall that at one point, VP Sara refused to acknowledge President Marcos's middle name, Romualdez, in one of her speeches. This was on the heels of changes in the leadership at the lower house and supposed plots to unseat Romualdez as House Speaker.
I think people are reading too much into it. No, I think it's very, very straightforward and simple. No, so borrowing the words of the Vice President that even she says that she could live without it. There's I think a bit too much speculation, and I think people are reading too much into that.
Yun, reading too much into it daw.
Puro haka-haka kasi. Puro conspiracy theory.
People kasi online, they
Yeah.
get so caught up in these conspiracy theories. But anyways, ayun, CIFs are reallocated.
Up next, despite the implementation of the price cap, rice inflation hits its highest level in 14 years, pushing headline inflation to its second straight month of acceleration in September. The details when we return.
Welcome back. You're still watching Big Story here on One News. Time to talk about prices because the country's inflation rate, I think a lot of us know, climbed for a second straight month in September on the back of inflation, higher food prices, particularly rice. Inflation jumped to 6.1% in September, up from 5.3% in August. This falls exactly on the upper end of the Bangko Central's forecast range for last month. The latest inflation print is lower, though, compared to the 6.9% logged in September of last year. This brings year-to-date inflation to 6.6%, way beyond the government's 2 to 4% target range. Rice, which has the biggest weight in the commodity basket, mainly drove inflation for the month. Rice inflation zoomed to a 14-year high of 17.9% in September, despite the imposition of the price cap, which was lifted just yesterday. The Department of Agriculture insists that the policy had been successful in bringing down rice prices. The DA expects prices to go down further once the supply from the local harvest kicks in.
In retail, siguro mga 36, 38 pesos yan. Before the end of the month. Harvest maraming produce.
So even national statistician Dennis Mapa has said it is mainly rice.
Yes, rice being the biggest weight, having the biggest weight in
Posible
that
kaya yung
commodity
price cap,
basket.
yung price cap, the effects of that will be seen in the next month.
Ang sinabi kasi ni national statistician
could
is
be.
they need to study further the actual impact of the price cap.
He said this data that they released this morning was made up of two parts. Yung first part kasi they saw quite low compliance, around roughly 20% compliance to the price cap. The second half of that survey period, that's when the price ceiling had higher compliance rate. So it took time for the retailers kasi
To comply.
initially daw they were selling old stock, right? So it took them some time to catch up to the price cap,
That's
which makes sense.
Yeah, that's
right?
also what the former DA USEC told us last night. Si a former USEC Fermin Adriano. Right, he said, and not only that, but the monitoring mechanism they have is Metro Manila centric.
12 wet markets only around the country, which, you know, when you think about it, is
It's so
probably
little.
insufficient, right?
Insufficient.
Because you use just 12 wet markets across the country to monitor yung compliance rate and the prices of commodities across 7,000 plus islands, across 110 million population. I mean, come on.
He did
right?
say, though, that he preferred tariff cuts as the more sustainable market instrument. And here's what he said.
I've been advocating before that we should just reduce the tariff or even lift the tariff. That's a market instrument, policy-based market instrument, because that's more sustainable so that we can lower. The problem right now is that our prices are influenced by international high prices of the rice in the global market. Because we significantly import rice, about 20% of our requirements, about 20%, that means it can influence the rice prices here.
Now, because of this latest inflation number, which went past estimates, the likelihood of the BSP raising interest rates once again, one more time before the end of the year is
pretty high. And that next
growing.
meeting is November 16. So according to ING's economist, Nikki Mapa, no, sabi niya nga, they have held pat twice, so they did not change interest rates, but he thinks the likelihood is, like you said, higher come November.
We are the per months, though. Consumption is about to get higher.
It's usually, it usually trends higher towards the end of the year. That's true.
Well, I guess it remains to be seen, no? Because another suggestion on how to lower the price cap is, according to Shaila Francisco's report, agri groups are pushing for an SRP on imported rice. So it's another new policy again.
But the problem with SRP is you can't enforce it kasi suggested
suggested
lang. Suggestion.
To prevent manipulation in the market.
But again, it's a suggestion because the minute you force a certain price on a free market, wala na, it distorts the whole
Ito na naman
market,
tayo,
right?
di ba? Price cap, floor, ceiling na naman.
But I do look forward to that study on the effects of the price cap, even if it was just for a month.
I think we're with you there.
Another news, drag artist Pura Luca Vega is set to post bail after being arrested on Wednesday over the controversial Ama Namin performance. Pura insists that the arrest had been unfair, especially since they did not receive a copy of the subpoena. Other drag artists and supporters of Pura have chipped in to help complete the 72,000 peso bail for Pura. The donation drive has since pooled around 400,000 pesos in total. Despite facing complaints and being declared persona non grata in several localities, Pura maintains that the drag performance was purely artistic expression and is not meant to offend anyone.
I've been trying to deal with all of the cases that were charged against me. We tried to submit yung motion to reopen the case and to submit the counter affidavit. So it was kind of a shock now to be handed the warrant of arrest because I feel like it was a bit quick. The reception was a little blown out of proportion because I stand by what I said that when you're doing drag cassettes, it's a form of storytelling. So it's really just telling a story wherein I envision Jesus being one with the queer people.
Well, the hashtag Free Pura Luca Vega is now trending on X.
Oo nga eh. We'll see. I mean, like, it sounds weird that he was not handed a subpoena when that is part of the legal process.
Pero si QCPD insists that they follow the proper procedure.
Sa QC kasi,
Manila District rather. Puras facing charges for immoral doctrines, obscene publications, exhibitions, and indecent shows.
That's a lot. We'll definitely keep an eye on the updates for that. But ito naman, isa pa. For all drivers and motorists,
Finally,
after a temporary period of providing paper-printed driver's licenses, the Land Transportation Officer LTO announced that it has received an ample supply of plastic cards, enabling them to finally begin addressing backlog issues starting October. LTO Assistant Secretary Vigor Mendoza said that those issued with paper licenses after paying their fees can go straight to the LTO branch that they applied from and trade it for a plastic card. However, along with this, the agency is also lifting its earlier order to extend the renewal period for licenses that expired from April 1 to 30, 2023. According to a memorandum issued by the LTO, licenses that expired in April will only have until the end of October to renew. Come next month, the window will now be open for those whose licenses expired in May. The schedule will continue until those with licenses that expired in September are renewed.
So ginawa natin staggered, hindi natin sinabay-sabay. For two reasons. No? Number one, kasi yung ating supply of plastic cards, staggered rin naman. No? Pero mas importante, yung pangalawa, ayaw natin na bigla-bigla na lang lahat pupunta sa ating mga district offices, babibilaukan yung ating mga personnel, and chances are, hahaba yung pila.
All right, before we go, our big picture tonight is for all the yogis/art connoisseurs out there. So, look at that. That's an interesting mix, right? That is also what we thought seeing this yoga session at the National Museum. Yep, you heard that right. The National Museum is now offering free yoga classes like this one right in front of One Luna's Spolarium. The National Museum's Facebook page has details for the schedule of classes. Of course, mixed reactions. I don't really think it's that bad.
But at the same time, I don't know how I feel about sun saluting in front of a...
Yun nga, may
a
nagsasabi.
national...
Medyo gory kasi yung
Spolarium.
Yeah. Yoga ka, tapos ganun yung picture. But also, on the other hand, since we're seeing it does provide traffic flow, foot traffic to the National Museum.
There's also that.
That first class, which was yesterday, October 4, had 18 participants. So, I don't know how much foot traffic that actually brought
well, if
in.
I wanted
it sparked
to
conversations, at least.
It
makes it friendlier.
More accessible, I guess.
Pero yung issue dito kasi parang how appropriate is it?
Yes.
Like, you're not even allowed to wear it sleeveless. There's a dress code,
there's a dress code.
Going into National Museum.
Right.
And just seeing that is quite odd.
Yeah.
So I guess it's, again, one matter
You
that
thought it was AI.
I thought, I was like, is that real? Then I Googled it. It is real. At hindi lang siya yung first, meron pa for all the months of October in celebration
Weekly,
of Galleries Month.
Yeah.
But I think the rest, based on my understanding, it won't be in front of the Spolarium. So it'll be in different galleries. So baka dun sa One Luna Gallery. Yeah, iikutin daw. So you missed the Spolarium already. If you
I don't know how I feel about that. But
Mare, you missed the Spolarium. You didn't go to yoga session.
All right, that's it for the show tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.